And that is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught us what? Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir. Whoever believes in Allah in the last day. Why the last day? Because they will have to stand before Allah and give an account on that last day. فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. Either say something good or stay quiet. A person does not have to constantly talk and talk and talk. There are times when you stay quiet and you reflect and you think about other things. The next thing that causes a hard heart is excessive laughing. Now, excessive laughing does not necessarily mean that, there are some people who have a very, uplifting kind of spirit and, personality. They're always, joking around, having a smile on your face. I'm not talking about those kind of people. I'm talking about a person who's constantly either trying to entertain themselves or they're constantly trying to entertain someone else by saying something that is funny. And think about this. Imagine you're sitting in front of your child. I'm giving you a very important example here. Imagine sitting in front of your own child. Your child did something that is wrong. But instead of sitting over there and understanding that they did something wrong, imagine if they're sitting in front of you and they're laughing. Imagine they're sitting in front of you and they're laughing. What would you say about that kind of, about your child? That here you did something that is wrong, and instead of being regretful, you're laughing. You understand? A person who's constantly laughing, this is why even in the hadith mentioned in Tirmidhi, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that this is one of the causes of a hard heart, that a person is constantly laughing. And that is why in the Quran, in Surah Al-Kahf, Allah tells us, فَلْيَضْحَقُوا قَلِيلًا وَلْيَبْكُوا كَثِيرًا. That laugh little and cry more often out of the khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another thing that causes a hard heart is excessive sinning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Quran, كَلَّا بَلْ رَانَ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. And Ibn Hajar mentions that when a person continuously sin and sin and sin, and they don't ever do tawbah, then their heart becomes darkened and their heart becomes blackened, and to a point that no iman and no nur of iman and Quran and Sunnah can penetrate that heart. That is why Ibn Hajar says that this is a rust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to in the Quran. So excessive sinning is something that, yes, we are sinners. We have shortcomings, but we always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. And the next thing is, what are the consequences? When a person actually has a hard heart, what are the consequences of that? Number one is that no Quranic ayah, no hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam phases them. No, there is no situation. The death of a person does not affect them. A sick person does not affect them. You go to the graveyard, you see a person being buried right in front of you, someone that you love, and you're still unfazed. This is what happens when a person's heart becomes hardened. They find no pleasure in the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At least when you come for Salat al-Fajr, when you stand at night for Qiyam, at least there is some pleasure. You feel that, Alhamdulillah, I have accomplished something. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept that. But a person whose heart has become hardened, then there is no ibadah that brings them pleasure. Another sign of a hard heart is that they have absolutely no mercy towards others. When they see, imagine when so many people saw the videos about what was happening in Pakistan when the floods were taking place. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our brothers and sisters there. Millions of people are displaced and so forth. But the point is, imagine you're watching something like that and your heart is not touched. Imagine looking at that and you don't feel any mercy. Imagine looking at that and you feel that there's nothing, there's no connection, there's no emotional feelings at that time. You will say that this person, he is dead inside. Why? Because he has a hard heart, that he cannot even sympathize with others when he or she sees others in a difficult situation. And then the last thing is that the problem or the consequences of having a hard heart is that there is no regret over sinning. And then the last thing is, what are the cures of it? The very first thing is that, look, just like any doctor would tell you, that when it comes to a sickness, when it comes to an illness, there is no overnight fix. There is no overnight pill that you can take. It takes time. You go through a prescription, you go through the course of a prescription and so forth. You go through sometimes surgery, you go through rehab, there's a process that you have to go through in order to help heal something. When it comes to a sick heart, when it comes to a dead heart, in order to revive that dead heart, hard, you have to go through some steps and processes. Step number one is you have to start reading the Quran. It might take time. A person who has a dead heart, a hard heart, you cannot sit one night with the Quran and say, you know what, I'm still the same person, I've committed the same sins. You have to go back at it every single day. So reading the Quran, reflecting upon the Quran. The next thing is remembering the inevitable. What is that one inevitable? Death.